news coverage here on Fox News tonight. We are finally getting some breaking news. We're being told that it appears the bilateral summit between President Xi and President Trump is now concluding. We know that because the motorcades are now pulling up, and the motorcades will then fill with the president and his team and the president of China and his team, and they will go to the Temple of Heaven at the Kingdom of Heaven. And so we think things are picking up. Now, the question is, will they say anything to the cameras when this is all said and done in the next couple of minutes? We hope to find that out in a minute. We're getting Aishah Hasnie back on a camera right now, and when we do that, we'll ask her how this thing will play out. Meantime, let's bring back the panel. Caroline Sunshine, Jessica Milan-Patterson, Josh Ritter, Shirin Yadigar, Chef Andrew Gruel, Jack Posobiec, and Michael Sobolik. Michael, the thing is breaking up. It went well. Do you anticipate hearing anything from anyone?
Given the Chinese Communist Party's relationship with the media, I'm not holding my breath for an immediate press avail. I think we've all gotten so used to how open President Trump is with the media. Just on his way out of Washington, I was watching him earlier, and he was talking with the press on the south lawn of the White House and just going down the line before he got in Marine One. And that's normal. Like, we've all gotten used to that, but this is China. So I don't know exactly how long we're going to wait here. But I do think that does speak to one of the biggest differences, right? Like, Trace, like Xi Jinping doesn't really have anything akin to true journalists over there. And I think that's one of the things that makes me proud to be an American in the middle of all of this.
Very quickly, these are not live pictures. Tracy, on the right-hand side of the screen, is that correct? Not live pictures, but now we have gotten official word that the bilateral has wrapped, and we will take any sound or any pictures as they become available to us. I want to put this up on the screen, Jack Posobiec. This is the Washington Post headline. It says, China gains major edge on U.S. amid Iran war, intelligence report finds. It goes on to say a confidential U.S. intel analysis details how China is exploiting the war in Iran to maximize its advantage over the U.S. across military, economic, diplomatic, and other fields, said two officials who have read the report. So what they're saying here is that, if they had to, put the odds on this, they're giving the edge to China in these talks. Jack, what do you think?
Well, Trace, I read the Washington Post report earlier. I'm also seeing some reports now coming out from the Chinese side. One of the spokeswomen actually for the Chinese party making reference to something called the Thucydides trap and saying that Xi Jinping spoke with President Trump about the potential of avoiding the Thucydides trap. And this, of course, is a reference to the Peloponnesian Wars, wherein the ruling state of Sparta was challenged by the rising state of Athens. And the idea that this is a cycle that goes on throughout geopolitics, where the current superpower will always be challenged militarily, and then it will end into a war with the rising power. This, of course, been something that a lot of people have used to describe China and the United States over the years. Very interesting and striking to hear that type of language from Xi Jinping's side.
And I love the analysis along with the history lesson. Jack Posobiec, thank you very much. Let's bring in Aishah Hasnie. She is back live with us. Aishah, what are you hearing? The bilat we know has wrapped. What's next?
I like that history lesson, too, by the way. Trace, the bilat has wrapped now. It did go longer than expected. Read that however you may, but there was a lot on the agenda. And quite frankly, there was a large delegation that the president showed up with. We do know that there were some of these business leaders that were seen leaving earlier on in the meeting. So the president, I guess, fulfilled his promise when he Truth Socialed on his way to Beijing that he would make that ask, that first ask to Xi, that he open up China to these business leaders, these 16 CEOs, tech and business CEOs that he's brought with him, including the NVIDIA CEO, a big chip maker for AI models. He also, Apple's Tim Cook and Elon Musk, a part of that delegation. So that was handled at the beginning of this bilat. And then potentially the second half of it may have involved his cabinet secretaries. Remember, he brought really important cabinet secretaries, the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, potentially to talk about Iran and the Strait of Hormuz, as well as the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, who has been very interested in the talks about Taiwan and the Taiwan policy. What happens with that, the way that China feels about Taiwan. We do have that statement out from the Chinese already, as Jack mentioned, in which they say that the Chinese President Xi told Trump that trade wars have no winners, that trade teams, both sides of the trade teams produce, quote, generally balanced and positive outcomes. We don't know exactly what that means. We don't know how the Chinese are reading that. We don't know what the U.S. side has to say about that yet. We don't have a readout from our side just yet. And there is no news conference, as I mentioned earlier, because we are in this communist country. They have not offered one for the U.S. press, so we won't be able to ask the president any questions about this bilat. We may have to wait until he sits down with Sean Hannity a little bit later, or Truth Social, or a statement from the White House. Again, there was a lot to discuss, including Iran. Iran has been looming in the background of all of this pomp and circumstance, this bilateral, this significant meeting between the two leaders. And the Secretary of State telling Sean Hannity, in fact, a couple of hours ago aboard Air Force One, that they were hopeful that they could convince China, pressure China into getting Iran to come to some sort of an agreement, even though the president says he really doesn't need anyone's intervention or anyone's help to figure out what to do with Iran. Trace?
Aishah Hasnie live for us in Beijing. Aishah, thank you.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.